Welcome to Geopolitics Unplugged with your host, Justin James McShane, and co-host Glenda Rice. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share to help fuel us to produce more content for you all.
You ever scroll through the news and see all those crazy headlines about China's new military stuff?
Oh, yeah.
You know the ones I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Like, it seems like the U.S. is falling behind, especially when it comes to drones.
Right.
Feels like every week there's some new, crazy, cutting-edge thing they're showing off.
Absolutely.
It's easy to get caught up in that, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. Those headlines are definitely meant to, grab you,
Right.
They play on that fear, that worry about, is the U.S. still on top?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
Okay.
We're going beyond just the clickbait headlines.
I like it.
And we're going to look at a system, a U.S. system, that's kind of quietly changing how we think about drone defense.
Interesting.
It's called the Epirus Leonidas system.
Okay, yeah, the Leonida.
Have you heard of this?
Oh, yeah. It's a really interesting piece of technology.
Yeah.
It shows how the U.S. is really trying to come up with new ways to deal with these new threats,
So let's break this down. What is it about the Leonidas system that makes it so different?
Well, okay, so instead of using, the usual weapons, missiles and
Instead of traditional kinetic weapons.
Yeah, exactly. The Leonidas uses high-power microwaves.
Microwaves.
Yeah, HPMs, to basically stop drones from working.
So like an EMP.
Kind of, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a focused EMP blast. Very precise.
So it's not like a nuke or anything.
No, nothing like that.
It just fries the electronics.
Exactly. And the really cool part is it can target just one drone.
Oh, wow.
Or it can target a whole swarm of them.
Really?
Without hitting anything else.
That's amazing. So why is this better than just shooting them down, with a missile or something?
Okay, well, first think about cost, right? Missiles, those things are expensive.
Oh, yeah, millions of bucks.
Exactly. But the Leonidas, it can take out a drone for pennies worth of electricity.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And especially when you're talking about a whole bunch of drones, swarms of them, that cost difference is huge.
Right. That makes sense.
Plus, the Leonidas doesn't run out of ammo,
Oh, interesting.
As long as it has power, it can keep going.
So unlimited magazine.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's a lot safer, too.
Oh, how so?
Well, no explosions, right? It's just focused energy.
So less collateral damage,
Way less.
especially in cities and stuff.
Yeah, or anywhere near something important.
So where can you actually use this thing?
Oh, that's the other cool part. It's super flexible.
Okay.
You can put it on a building, a vehicle, you name it.
So it's not just for the Air Force or something?
No, they've even tested it on ships, even to stop small boats.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not just for air defense?
Nope. Lots of possibilities.
That's incredible. So, we hear all this stuff about China and their tech,
Mm-hmm.
but it sounds like the U.S. is really doing some interesting stuff too.
Definitely. And it's an important point,
Okay.
People focus on what China's building, their offensive stuff,
Right.
but they forget there's always another side to the story.
Like a countermeasure.
Exactly. We just don't always hear about it.
It's like reading half a book.
Exactly.
You don't get the whole picture.
For every weapon, there's someone working on how to stop it.
That's fascinating.
Happens all the time, just quietly in the background.
This Leonidas system is a perfect example of that, right?
Absolutely. Not making headlines, but it's a big deal.
Quietly changing things.
Big time. And that's something to keep in mind.
What do you mean?
When you read the news, when you see those big headlines, don't just take them at face value.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Dig a little deeper, think about the whole picture.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype.
It is, but look for those countermeasures. They're out there.
That's a great point. So you mentioned that Leonidas uses those high-power microwave, those HPMs, to stop electronics from working.
Right.
Can you explain that a little more? What kind of electronics are we talking about?
Sure. So think about it this way. Electronics, they all have these little circuits, delicate components. And HPMs, they basically overload those circuits.
Oh.
It's like a power surge, makes them short circuit.
Yeah.
Things like sensors, communications, navigation, all that stuff.
The things a drone needs to actually fly.
Exactly. That's what gets messed up.
Fascinating. But I got to ask, are there any, limitations to this technology?
Oh, for sure. There are always limitations.
Like what?
Well, range is one thing.
Okay.
It works best up close. Think of it like a really strong flashlight.
Okay.
The further away you get, the weaker the beam gets.
So it's not going to take out a drone from miles away.
No, it's more of a close-range defense system.
I got you. What about, weather? Does that affect it?
Yeah, weather can be a factor.
Love
Like
that.
heavy rain, thick fog that can absorb some of the microwave energy.
Makes it less effective.
Exactly.
So it's not like a perfect solution.
No system is perfect, right?
Right.
That's why you need layered defense.
Layered defense.
Yeah, you use multiple systems,
Okay.
each one with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Makes sense.
That way you've got all your bases covered.
So it's not just about having one super weapon.
Nope. It's about having the right tools for the job.
That makes sense. You mentioned electronic warfare earlier. A lot of folks might not know what that is.
Right.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Basically, it's like a battle, but it's fought over the electromagnetic spectrum.
The electromagnetic spectrum?
Yeah, it's like this invisible highway, all these waves carrying information.
Oh, okay.
Radio, radar, GPS, it's all traveling on that spectrum.
Like the invisible infrastructure of our world.
Exactly. And in electronic warfare, you're trying to mess with those signals.
To gain an advantage.
Exactly. Disrupt your enemy, protect yourself, things like that.
So the Leonidas, that's just one tool in electronic warfare.
One tool, yeah. There's a whole bunch of others.
What else is there?
Oh, jamming, spoofing, shielding. It gets pretty complex.
Wow. So it's not just about drones then?
Nope. Electronic warfare is everywhere.
It's pretty mind-blowing stuff, but I want to bring this back to our listeners.
Sure.
Why should they care about all this? What does it have to do with their lives?
That's a great question, and it might seem like something far away, like a movie or something.
Right.
But electronic warfare, it's already touching our everyday lives.
Really?
Think about drones, right? They could disrupt air travel, mess with power grids, even be used for bad stuff by terrorists.
That's kind of scary.
It is, and that's why it's important to understand this stuff.
To be aware of the threat.
Exactly, and to know what we can do about it.
So we're not just helpless.
Not at all. Knowledge is power. Right.
Right. So with the U.S. working on stuff like the Leonidas,
yeah,
it sounds like we're not just letting China run wild.
Exactly. But here's the thing.
What's that?
It's not just China we have to worry about.
Oh, God.
Other countries are getting into the drone game, too.
So it's a global thing.
Big time. Everyone's developing drones. Everyone needs countermeasures.
It's like a constant arms race.
Gotta keep innovating. Gotta stay ahead of the curve.
And that's where new tech comes in.
Absolutely.
So besides Leonidas, what other anti-drone stuff is out there?
Oh, yeah. There's some really wild stuff out there.
Like what?
Well, you've got lasers, right?
Lasers?
Yeah, powerful lasers that can just burn a drone right out of the sky.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
Then there's jamming. That's a big one.
Jamming.
Yeah, they basically blast the drone with all these signals.
Okay.
Messes up their communications, their GPS.
Makes them go haywire.
Exactly. They're basically blind.
It's pretty clever.
And then you've got the more hands-on approaches.
Hands-on.
Yeah, like nets.
Nets, like catching them.
Yep, they fire these big nets, tangle up the drone.
Wow, so it's like a high-tech game of capture the flag.
Kinda, yeah. And some places are even using birds. Birds train birds of prey. They snatch the drones right out of the air.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. But it shows you how seriously people are taking this threat.
So many different ways to deal with it.
And that's the key.
Right? What's that?
Always adapting, always coming up with new solutions.
It's like a constant game of chess.
Exactly. And that brings us back to our main point,
About not just focusing on the headlines.
Right. Don't just freak out because you read about China's newest drone.
There's always more to the story.
Always. Take a deep breath, do a little research,
Look at the whole picture.
Exactly. Remember those countermeasures? Remember the stuff we talked about today?
The Leonidas, the lasers, the birds.
All of it. It's happening. People are working on solutions.
That's reassuring, honestly.
And that's what we wanted to show you today.
To give people a more balanced perspective.
Exactly, because technology, it's always changing, and we've got to keep up.
That's a great point. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive, to say the least.
I've enjoyed it.
We started off talking about those scary headlines, but we ended up learning about a whole world of countermeasures.
And hopefully our listeners feel a little more informed now.
Less anxious, more empowered.
That's the goal.
Well, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep those minds curious.
Remember, don't just believe everything you read.
This
Keep
has been
asking
another
questions.
Informative
and
episode
we'll
of
see you next time.
Geopolitics Unplugged by Justin James McShane. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share to help fuel us to produce more content for you all.